All right. Hello, everyone. My name is David Chan. I'm the Director of Instructional Technology at Evanston Township High School, and I'm joined by several other panelists, members of GEG Chicagoland, which you'll hear about a little bit. And we're here to talk about the first 30 days. So before I kind of go into an overview, let's go ahead and introduce our panelists, starting with Hank Thiele.
Hi, everybody. I'm Hank Thiele, the Assistant Superintendent for Technology and Learning in the Main 207 schools, Park Ridge, Des Plaines area in Illinois.
Okay, and then Mina.
Hi, my name is Mina Marion. I'm the Instructional Technology Specialist here at Evanston Township High School, and I work closely with David in supporting Chromebooks and PD.
And then Jay.
Hi everyone, my name is Jenny Magera. I'm currently the Digital Learning Coordinator for a network of 32 Chicago public schools, but in about 2 or 3 weeks, I'm going to be the Chief Technology Officer for Des Plaines School District 62, so my K-8 kiddos are eventually going to grow up and become Hank students.
Awesome, congratulations.
That'll be awesome.
Yeah.
That's a big win for us.
Absolutely. Fantastic. All right. So as I mentioned last month, Google hosted the Education on Air conference, and I'll post that link. It's basically educationonair.withgoogle.com, and they recorded all of the sessions. So there were 2 days, and the first day featured some keynotes and panel presentations, and then the second day featured presentations from really all across the world. And they solicited hundreds of different sessions and lessons, and were led by educators, teachers, faculty, staff members all across the world. I think we all presented something here, but we're here to talk more about kind of some of the sessions we looked at or we heard about and some takeaways from that. So without further ado, I'll get started. You know, I have 2 from the 2 days, and I'm welcoming, I think Donna's joining on here. The first 2 days, Donna, did you want to introduce yourself?
I think she's coming up muted because
okay,
she joined.
All right, we'll come back.
Late.
So the first day I looked at a session by Lisa Bodell. She did 3 ways to start a change revolution, and the 3 ways she kind of talked about were reverse assumptions. So kind of instead of looking at the opposite of a problem, thinking about alternatives. And my takeaway from that too is like we're all in like so many meetings. She talked about this too, and kind of rethinking how meetings are structured, rethinking how the rules and the norms of meetings, and even from example of like setting the meeting time for like an hour and just saying nope, you know, we're just going to go until we're done with what we need to do, and we're going to try to beat the record time of the next meeting. So like the record was 39 minutes, and let's try to beat that every single time to try to really maximize efficiency, as opposed to setting out with yes, we're just going to meet for an hour and we're going to fill the time to do that. One of the other things she did was she incorporated the location of the meeting in the agenda, and it was always different. It was like a secret location, so people were forced to really dig into, you know, what we're going to talk about, what's the agenda going to be about, in order to even find where the meeting's located. So challenging kind of the assumptions made to kind of look at problems and how to solve them. The second thing she talked about was asking killer questions. And one of the things we had here at ETHS was a faculty checkout form. And it was on paper for the longest time. And teachers were kind of going on the scavenger hunt to each of our various centers to try to get these checks to see if they're cleared. Like if I have returned all my AV equipment, if I returned all my library books. And all we did was we kind of asked, do we need that paper copy? Do we need them running around? Could we have a more centralized system? And this year we just started a Google spreadsheet, had all those center people kind of have their own column locked down with protected ranges, and then the teachers all got notifications using FormMill with a script so that they kind of saw their statuses 2 weeks before and then 1 week before, and then they did minimal running around, and it was all paperless. So if it didn't take us kind of asking the question of, do we need this paper copy, do we need this process, how can we improve it, that wouldn't have happened. And then lastly, her third piece was killing stupid rules. So, you know, we work a lot with, we try to incorporate students more in this kind of thing, right? Because they're kind of the recipients of a lot of these potentially stupid rules, and trying to identify, you know, what we can kind of reshape and rethink about these rules. And from the faculty side, one rule we talked about was field trip permission slips. And same kind of thing. Do we need this form, and how can we make it better? And when we sat in a room with a couple people, teachers, staff, students, administrators, and we really hammered home, like, did we need this form? We realized the answer was no. Like, the form wasn't binding, it didn't really go home, it didn't really do anything after fact. So this form that we'd been using for such a long time, we decided, no, we don't need it, we're going to come up with a better system instead of that. So it's really taking the time to ask that question, do you need this, and really why you do, and then being unafraid or being willing to kind of challenge that assumption and then acting on it in the opposite direction. So, really, I think that the key, especially, I think we're all coming from various large schools or school districts, CPS and Maine, enacting change in such large places kind of takes that thinking of like, I really want to challenge this, as opposed to if you were in a smaller environment, it'd be a little easier to kind of incorporate change, right? It wasn't so overreaching and arching, things like that. So that was my day one kind of takeaway. Really focusing on change and starting a change revolution, or working on change in a large environment. The second piece I had was just virtual field trips. I thought they did this group, and I'll post the links in the doc and share it with our viewers. But the virtual field trip session was great because they really tied together a lot of these great resources. A lot of resources we've heard before, like Google Art Project, Google Cultural Institute, to some newer ones that kind of maybe are flying under the radar, connected classrooms. And then now with the announcement of expeditions and tying in this, I love the idea of this Google Cardboard and the mobile devices, and really taking our students to these places and not just experience them two-dimensionally, but really three-dimensional, like all around us. When I was in the classroom, I really liked the idea of the Google Maps and the Google Earth, but it was just a little clunky for me personally, and it was a little hard to really kind of get our students to create some of these great options. I still love, lit trips and Jerome Berg's work, and so some that are set up, but having our students kind of create their own, at least at the time for me, was a little more challenging. But I could see it being just that much more engaging with expeditions. I'm really excited about the possibilities there. So I recommend checking that session out. And really, one thing me and I kind of talked about today when we did this whole PD with our staff is just there's so many resources, and if we can kind of pare things down and help our teachers, help our staff, help our students really kind of look at some key ones. How do we determine which ones would affect them the most, or would give them the most benefit in the classroom, and helping them kind of identify those, I think, is really going to be a bigger part of our jobs, and kind of letting them know about that. So 2 takeaways from me. Again, day 1, Lisa Bodell, and then 2, virtual field trips and checking out expeditions. I'll share those links out on the doc. But Mina, how about you?
Am I up, or are we doing Hank next?
I need to hop in.
Oh, Hank, I'm sorry.
I've got to run to a board meeting. So.
No worries.
Thanks for getting me in here. I think the biggest thing I want to focus on is that the event itself has a lot of quality material, way more than you could have watched on those 2 days, and it's all archived. So I think, David, you'll put in the link to the site there, but if people just Googled Google for Education, Education on the Air, or any of those kinds of things, you're going to find the site with all of the documents and materials and videos. So it's kind of the gift that keeps on giving all year long, and it was hard at that point. We're getting towards the end of the year. I know a lot of my teachers were like, oh, I can't, I really couldn't do that. And I keep, telling people, look, you can do it all summer long. There's all the material, all the links are there, so you could experience it now pretty close to what it would have been experiencing it live, with everything being there. One of the ones that I really enjoyed digging through was from day 1, the panel that was from in the morning, talking about preparing students to be leaders in the future, to be digital leaders. And 2 of my favorite people, Ken Shelton and Jamie Cassip, were on that panel that discussed it. A great watch, nice easy one to watch over lunch sometime. But if you dig into that one, one of the things that Jamie does a nice job of talking about is how employers really are pushing for skills, and they want kids to have specific skills coming out of school and be ready. And part of the mindset being that it's not really skills you need to teach, it's the ability to learn new skills is really what comes out of what we're doing in school today, because the skills are going to change, but the ability to learn how to absorb and take on new skills won't. So, you know, I love hearing that message. I think that's something that we're all really preaching in our schools, and the more that that message could be delivered is better. That session has some students in it, has kind of a broad worldwide perspective. You know, you have some people from, you know, the U.S. in there, but also some European representative in there as well. So it's good to hear that as in a session. So I would just encourage people to take some time over the summer. You know, they're great sessions to grab over lunch or during some downtime, whatever that is, and catch up on a little bit from those 2 days.
Good, and I put the link, yeah, what are the skills of the future? Putting that in the doc. Thanks, Hank. Okay, Mina?
All right, guys, I'm going to leave for a board meeting.
Okay, have fun.
Bye, Hank. Well, so I watched a few different sessions, but one of the ones that I thought was interesting that I thought I'd bring up here is one around Google education groups and, you know, like what we're doing here and kind of the importance of whether it's through, you know, GEG or whether it's through Twitter, you know, wherever that professional learning network is, but how important it is really to have a group of people that you reach out to, that you can throw ideas off of, that you can get, you know, ideas for conferences to go to and things like that. And it's really becoming, you know, a necessity for teachers to have a part in that. And, you know, as David mentioned, we ran a PD today where teachers really did learn a lot from each other, and it's so rare for us to be able to sit down, have that group of people actually talking to one another about their cross-curricular needs, because, you know, when they're all using Google Apps, it doesn't really matter if they're teaching math and teaching English, they have things that they can share. So one of them was about Google education groups, and I'll share that link in the doc too, so if you wanted to check that out. Another one that I actually saw sort of a theme in some other ones, but that kind of focused around student creation. So the idea of, you know, yes, we have these tools for teachers, but how much you can do with technology in the hands of students. So, for example, things like video editing in, you know, WeVideo or Magisto. I'm actually not sure how to pronounce it. I pronounce it like it's Latin as a former Latin teacher, but whatever it's called, to create the different videos and mashups, you know, YouTube editor, ways that kids can really take content and make it their own and use that to express themselves. So instead of, you know, teachers being the ones in charge of content, really having kids create that content and put that out there and show that creativity. So, you know, video apps like that, also images such as like using Pixlr or PicMonkey were two that popped up. Canva is another one that came up. Lucid Press, you know, kind of fits into that. Kids creating sort of visually stimulating representations of what they're learning and then editing them to incorporate into their own knowledge. And then, of course, audio. So Twisted Wave was one. Vocaroo, where they're actually recording some of their, you know, their audio and then using that in their Google Drives or different presentations and sharing those with classes. So I think this focus on putting the technology in the hands of students as creators with also Storybird, right, where they're writing some of their own books and narrating their own books, drawing their own books. All of that is definitely something they could be doing on paper, but they get a lot more out of if they have, you know, this authentic audience that they're sharing it with, and that they're actually collaborating with their friends. And then the kids that don't really know how to draw are getting the side where they can pull in content from other places. So I saw that as sort of a theme, and I'll share a couple links as well. But of course, Google Drawings, I guess, how could I forget that one too? But I'll share some links in the doc, and yeah, I thought that was a big takeaway.
Sounds good, yeah. And I think, you know, part of what came out of the PD today was too, is like we're starting to see cycles of teachers who have done some of these things for a couple of years now, right? And so like 2 years ago, or today, we pulled up a spreadsheet that had projects from 2013, and then we talked about how we now have samples of this work, and this teacher has done this project and modified it and tweaked it year after year, but has great examples of digital examples of stuff that he or she has done for the past couple of years. And so we're kind of seeing, I think, the fruits of a lot of the stuff we've been talking about and doing and working with teachers, and now they have these archives and are building out these samples of student work, and it's great to see that. So thanks for sharing that. Jenny, I'm going to throw it to you, and then Donna, we'll conclude it with you, just some takeaways or thoughts and ideas from EDU on Air.
So I thought it was really cool to see LeVar Burton speak. I know that a lot of folks were excited because he's, you think LeVar Burton in education because of Reading Rainbow, but I like him because I'm a Trekkie. So I was excited to see Geordie LaForge talk about education, and I was really excited because he talked about Star Trek a lot. And he, we always joke that we're living in the future, and that the tricorder and the flip phone, and Google Glass and Geordie's visor. But he said seriously that science fiction can be a way to inspire kids and to get them to think, what if? And he made an interesting point to say, he said, I hope that some of the engineers who helped develop Google Glass and who helped develop the first smartphone or touchscreen interface were sitting in their living room watching Star Trek in the 60s or the 80s and the 70s, whenever, depending on what version of Star Trek you love, and said to themselves, gosh, I really think that this can happen, and that how groundbreaking that can be. And so I thought about that, and I brought some old sci-fi and new sci-fi to my students, and I had them watch for the devices. I had them watch for the types of society, to think about do they think that that's what society will be like in the future? One of the great points that a lot of people make is Lieutenant Uhura in the original series being an African-American woman on the bridge, being in power on the Starship Enterprise, and how groundbreaking that was for Gene Roddenberry to put people of color in high-ranking positions in a TV show at that time. And so I asked my kids to think about the society that it was in and the commentary, and then I asked them to think, what if? So how many of these devices do they see in their lives around them, or a parallel to it? How many of them do they think are possible to create? And how many of them do they think are totally wackadoo, or maybe even not a good idea? Like, we could think of something even better. And it was really cool to see my students look at these movies and look at these TV shows and the different contraptions and devices and ideas that they had, and really poke holes into them, to think about the transporter in Star Trek and think, how cool would it be to go from one place to another? But the kids thought it would be really dangerous, and would they feel safe, and how would you introduce that onto the market? How would you sell tickets for it? Would you buy in bulk and say, if my whole family goes on the transporter, it would be less money than someone else? Could you stand really close together? Because in Star Trek, sometimes they're holding each other and they beam together. And it was such an amazing and powerful conversations for my kids to have, that they started designing, and so that led into an invention session, and we did it as a 20% project. But I'd never thought of really using science fiction as a way of inspiring my kids to innovate, and it's such an easy and obvious point. And then I also had them watch the keynote by Brittany Wenger, who is the student from Duke University who had won the Google Science Fair project, and my kids thought it was so amazing that her science fair project was so personally tied, and it was about cancer, and it wasn't just about, can you make a battery out of tinfoil? So it really inspired my kids for next year's STEAM Fair to think about real-world problem solving in their science work and in their innovations, rather than just trying to think of something that was cool and flashy, or a volcano that explodes food coloring, whatever, Pepto-Bismol. So I really liked that first day. It was inspirational, and I've started to show my kids more TED Talks and keynotes and things like that. And so they're really excited, and they all said they wanted to be on Google Education on Air next year. So they're trying to think about their sessions that they want to submit.
Great. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. In our Chrome Zone, our Student Tech Support Center, we had the conference running all day. I'd love to see that in more places, like if our cafeterias had it, or student learning centers or lounges and things like that. I think even just having it out there kind of get them the question, like, what is this, and kind of bring in some more students. So thanks for sharing that. And then we'll close, I guess, with Donna. Thanks for joining us, first of all, and go ahead.
Great. I actually am going to piggyback off what Mina was saying. I absolutely loved the Google Education groups, and we've kind of taken that here, and we're playing around with it as Google Learning groups. And I see it as a way, we always are talking about empowering students, and you really can't empower students unless teachers are empowered, and you can't really empower teachers unless there's an empowered system. So this seems like such a great way to empower teachers to come up with their own system, their own group. Is it by skill level? Is it by grade, content area, whatever they want to do? Maybe they want to find a mentor person to work with them if they have questions that are beyond their capabilities, and work with the Google learnings, the the platform that they have with the different learning modules on there, and that's really working well with them. They're devising their own structure. We've just kind of started it, and they're empowering themselves to learn how to do it and working through the material. Some of them, it's just magic when you first use some of the collaborative tools, just the basic Google Drive and everything. That's just magic for them, and to learn together and then take it right back to the classroom and work on lesson plans together. It's really, you know, people are starting at all different stages, so it's fun to be able to empower teachers to find that. For some people, of course, they've been doing this forever, and that's where this kind of conference comes from. But people are all over, and there's ways to help everybody with that. So it's been fun to play with that.
I love that. I think back to the first time I did a Google Doc and just shared it, and we saw the live text. Even before that, you know, it wasn't 100% live, and it was just still amazing. And you know, I think I personally will probably take it for granted now, and I think sometimes we're just constantly trying to, you know, help teachers get ahead and or assume that they know so much about Google Drive, but really to take a step back. You know, it's like when I was in the classroom, same thing when, you know, you teach something for so long and you forget that everyone's not starting, you know, with that 5 years that you've been teaching. You got to go back to that first year. So that's a great.
And I think that makes it intimidating because that people just, it's second nature to a lot of teachers, and for the people that are just starting out, it's very intimidating. And I think the learning groups like that, where they can develop themselves with people they trust, and it kind of levels the playing field and gets everybody in a supportive environment.
Absolutely. Excellent. All right. Did any other panelists have anything else to kind of share before we kind of close out? To summarize, and we'll share this, I posted a link to this Google Doc on our Hangout page. Once again, we are part of GEG Chicagoland, and you know, we have a lot of, actually, can we share? We have some pretty cool stuff in the pipeline and in the planning stages for next year, mostly revolving around site visits, you know, going to schools, seeing what people are doing in those schools, and you know, we're working on a calendar. We'll share that out pretty soon. But anything else from anyone else other than enjoy the summer?
Yeah, and if anyone has any ideas for what they'd like to see happen in the Chicagoland area in the Google Education Group, please reach out to any of us. You can join our community if you aren't a part of it already by going to Google Plus and searching GEG Chicagoland. Chicagoland, all one word, and then GEG is in Google Educator Group. And we purposely decided to call it Chicagoland and not Chicago because you can see Evanston, Des Plaines, City of Chicago, Park Ridge. Even if you're in Wisconsin, Iowa, or Michigan, we'll take you. Chicagoland is far-reaching. I'm sure some Canadians see themselves as Chicagoland. So it's just a community of geeked-out educators who like to talk tech and how it can change kids' and teachers' lives. So we'd love to see more people involved, and we'd also love to hear from folks what kind of events they want to happen. So you only get if you ask, so please ask. And please join our Google Plus community. Google Plus is a really cool party that not everyone's going to yet, but we're there and we're enjoying it, so come and play with us.
Absolutely. Great. All right, we'll close out with that. Thank you so much for joining us or watching recording wherever you are, and I want to thank everyone, for all our panelists, for taking some time on a Monday, right? It's still Monday? Or Tuesday, I don't know what day it is, to join us on the Hangout. So thanks to HangTube prior. So have a great rest of your evening, everyone, and good night.
Thank you.
Thanks.